So, footage has come out of Sir Jim Ratcliffe arriving at Manchester United, having a meeting, and a lot of information is coming out today. And I expect a lot more to come out in the coming days about INEOS's big plan. Dan Ashworth, Paul Mitchell, where's the priority? What's INEOS's priority? The overhaul, trimming down the wage bill, what INEOS's plan is, and more. We've also got updates on Jadon Sancho. It looks like that Borussia Dortmund deal is pretty much agreed. They just got to agree on a loan wage structure. There's a feeling that United probably will be paying about 80%, 70% of the wages though, which is ridiculous how we get mugged off, because we buy him off Dortmund for 72 million and then we loan him back to Dortmund for a 2 million loan fee and we're like, yeah, we're going to pay all the wages. But let's dive into the news. So please do hit that like button if you have not already, and of course subscribe down below if you're new. This first slide is just footage from the Sun of Sir Jim Ratcliffe arriving at Manchester United, shaking people's hands, sort of walking around and meeting people and all of that. While Sir Jim Ratcliffe won't be massively involved in terms of making decisions and that, he's going to let Brailsford and Blanc do that. He's going to have some involvement. He's going to meet people. He wants to know sort of how United is running the inside. He's obviously taken over football operations and how he can change that. And talking about changing that, it seems the priority is Dan Ashworth and Paul Mitchell. And I think this would be brilliant. Now, I am going to say, I feel like until it happens, there's a part of me that's like, it almost seems too good to be true that it could be potentially United PR spin, because obviously the Glazers didn't agree to the full sale. And we know that there was a lot of outrage that there wasn't a full sale. So I feel like all the news surrounding INEOS is going to be super positive. But if this is the case, and I actually believe this is what INEOS want to do, and if this does happen, then that's a real positive change. I think Dan Ashworth would be a massive statement signing for United, pinching him from Newcastle, who he recently joined. He got Newcastle top four within his first season. He's there under the big Saudi Newcastle project. If we could pinch Dan Ashworth from Newcastle, which to be honest, I never thought we were going to be able to do until recent reports have come out and indicated that Dan Ashworth is open to the move because he believes he's going to be given the freedom under Ratcliffe. That would be brilliant. And obviously bringing in Paul Mitchell to help with the recruitment side of stuff instead of Darren Fletcher, who's not experienced, would be brilliant. And I think that would be a real statement from INEOS. That would be a real statement from Ratcliffe. And this is exactly what United have needed to do. But there's always the part of me that's sceptical that goes, this is too good to be true. This is too smart. And we know that because it's not the full sale, and there's no guarantee that Ratcliffe will ever own the full club, because that was not included in the full sale, which is 25%. I always feel like every single story that comes out by the media on the takeover is really, really positive, that I'm like, oh, is it just a classic PR spin to keep us happy? But reliable sources do say this is the plan. Paul Mitchell is also being considered for a head of recruitment role, with Dan Ashworth the number one priority sporting director. So Dan Ashworth, by the way, to clarify this, would come in and he'd do Murtaugh's role, but he'd be the sporting director. So he'd overhaul the club in the sense of he would try and change the attitude of the club, sort of the mood around the camp, like he did at England, how he got a much better mood around the camp there. He would then obviously bring in Paul Mitchell and sort of help with an identity and stuff, but Paul Mitchell would do the finer details on recruitment. And I think actually, I know there's a lot of people saying, could those two work together? I think they could work together really well. But one thing I saw, and someone tweeted this, and I can't remember who, but it was a really good point. It was saying, had the Glazers actually just done this to begin with, we wouldn't have been in this whole takeover thing. The reason the Glazers had to put the club up for sale and get a minority stake is because they'd run United so badly, and because the debt was so bad, and United was just a complete mess. They had to obviously have investment to stay at United. But had they actually not given Woodward the reins for 10 years and had someone like Ashworth and had someone like Mitchell and given sporting people and footballing people control and freedom within the club, I reckon the 1.4 billion we spent under Woodward could have got us 3-4 Premier League titles and Champions League. We'd be generating more money. Considering how much money we generate when we're bad, imagine how much money we generate when we're good. And the Glazers wouldn't even have to go through this whole takeover thing when you actually think about it. But the ideal scenario, and hopefully this is what happens, is Blanc replaces Arnold, which is basically 99% done. Mitchell replaces Fletcher, which lots of credible sources are saying is the plan, but that's not happened. And United haven't officially approached Mitchell yet. And then Ashworth replaces Mercer, which would be absolutely brilliant, but it's going to be difficult to get him out of Newcastle. But there's reports saying that it can be done. United might have to pay a bit of money, though Newcastle won't let him go. That would be ideal. And then the Glazers eventually getting replaced. That would be the ideal scenario. But I always say, as good as the sources are that are saying this, I always say there's always Man United throw in positive news about this takeover, because it's not a full sale as a distraction. So I always say, wait and see. wait and see. I want this to happen eventually, especially the bit at the bottom, Glazers eventually leave, because, we were told that Jim Ratcliffe was eventually going to get full control, and the expectation was Jim wouldn't buy United unless he was going to get full control one day, and hopefully that's still the case. But we know with the takeover, there's not a clause that says Jim can get full control. Hopefully, Jim does eventually buy the Glazers, but you get my point. Continuing on with news on the takeover, the Muppeteers said this: INEOS will communicate and line up their plans over the next few weeks, and Sir Jim Ratcliffe will be directly involved. First actions likely to be regarding appointments of staff and directors from top down, and this will be discussed as soon as the deal is ratified. These moves can be implemented. So what they're saying is INEOS are sort of discussing their plans over the next few weeks, and once the deal is ratified, they can make the moves for Ashworth and Paul Mitchell. Obviously, we haven't made official moves for Ashworth and Paul Mitchell, and they're saying they can't do that until it's ratified, but they are obviously overhauling the staff and making plans of who they want to appoint, and then when the deal's ratified, they can actually make those appointments, which I think the deal will expected to be ratified late January, early February. But an interesting story that came out that's gone under the radar a little bit is this story by Rob Dawson saying Erik ten Hag wants to retain his influence in Manchester United's recruitment decisions once Sir Jim Ratcliffe's minority investment is ratified. And I'm thinking, oh no, this guy that wanted Anthony, this guy that wanted Mount, please no. But at the same time, it's important that Erik ten Hag has a say. It's just important that he's not the primary guy when it comes to recruitment. He leaves that to Ashworth and Mitchell. And the Muppeteers are saying that's likely to be the case. They said, I want to refer to this now. There's an article from Rob Dawson at ESPN today that slid a bit under the radar. The point of contention. INEOS are not bringing in guys like Ashworth and Mitchell for them not to run the show. And they don't believe current agreements work. So what they're saying is, INEOS wouldn't be looking to bring in Ashworth and Mitchell if they were going to give Ten Hag loads of freedom. Ashworth and Mitchell would run the show, but they would obviously make sure that Ten Hag was okay with this. But if Ten Hag's saying, I want Mason Mount, and Ashworth saying, well, look, there's this Orkun Koku guy who's 20 million and it's very similar to Mason Mount, and Mason Mount's 60 million with 1 year on his contract, they might go, look, let's do this. This guy's similar. Let's be a bit more effective. And as you said, again, I'll reiterate, I don't believe Ten Hag is on the cusp of being sacked, as the overhaul will begin on overhead. But for the long haul, change has to be accepted for any long-term future. And they're saying they're going to change it completely how they do transfers. Ten Hag's had too much freedom in the past, as we've seen with the Anthony and the Mount deals, and a lot of Ajax players or former Ajax players coming in. It's going to be that Ashworth and Mitchell do have the freedom, but obviously Ten Hag will have a say. And this was sort of information that I had heard. And I said INEOS are cutting the wage bill and staff overhaul around operations at United, a priority at United. I said Dan Ashworth is first choice to replace Murtagh. What a statement that would be, as I said. And Mitchell to replace Fletcher, head of a new role, recruitment role. And Fletcher, I think, is like a technical director or something, but they actually have like a role in mind. And one thing that was sort of pointed out is that INEOS, sort of no one really knows what is Arnold's exact role, what is Murtagh's exact role, what is Fletcher's exact role. But with INEOS, they're going to create exact roles to give Ashworth, to give Mitchell. It said that the wage bill will likely be significantly trimmed. Blanc did this when he first joined Juventus, and the aim is to do the same at United, which is why a lot of our big name players are on the way out. Martial and Sancho will leave. A Varane exit is looking likely in 2024, and they are three of the biggest earners, bar Rashford, and even players like Anthony and Casemiro could be sold if the right offers come in. But United aren't prioritising selling Casemiro because Ten Hag would like to get another year out of him. And then it was also sort of said, and I sort of spoke to someone that said basically Brailsford right now is currently assessing how operations work inside Man United and wants to define roles within recruitment. Ten Hag will be allowed a say over signings, but I expect him to have less power over recruitment. So while Ten Hag will have a say over signings when INEOS come in, from what I'm hearing and what the Muppeteers are saying and what other people are saying, it's that Ashworth and Mitchell would have the major say, but of course they would consent to Ten Hag. Now, talking of signings, talking of probably one of the worst signings in United history, arguably you could say the worst just because the guy refuses to play, and considering what we bought him for and what he's going to leave for, and we're paying for him to go out on loan. But it was said Dortmund will pay a loan fee for Jadon Sancho, with United paying part of his salary. It's believed that Dortmund will pay €3 million, which is £2.5 million, and about 40% of his salary. And that apparently it was said by Paul Hurst that Dortmund have offered to pay a third of Sancho's salary, so actually 33% is Paul Hurst for the loan deal. And Romano said breaking, Sancho is keen on Borussia Dortmund as he returns this option. He finds this ideal to find his best form again, and Dortmund and United now on negotiations over a loan fee. So it's kind of been said that Manchester United, that Sancho basically pretty much agreed to join Dortmund. That is his priority. He wants to go back to Dortmund. It's expected that it will be United and Dortmund sort of debating on a loan fee and a fee over the next few days, but it's expected this deal could be basically done in the next day or two. It's quite a simple deal to do just because, Sancho's not going to play for United, so United have really got no choice but to sort of get rid of him and get him out as much as they can as well. Anyway, Please do hit that like button. Of course, subscribe down below if you're new. That is all the news on United. Sancho Dortmund agreement basically done. Dan Ashworth and Paul Mitchell being appointed. This was a very late night takeover video, but there's so much news coming out, and I wanted a video just focusing on the news, condensing it for you guys. But I'll probably do a midday live stream tomorrow where we'll discuss this information, as well as reports coming out that United are looking at a midfielder in January. Of course, I'm waiting to get some more information from that to see if someone credible has any news on this about United. They can surprise transfer in January. So make sure to subscribe for that. Thank you for watching. Bye.